Well, welcome everybody. This is Will and Chris, and we're here to talk about the 2020 Architects of the New Paradigm Conference up in Seattle, March 21st, 22nd. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Will, good to see you. Often I usually see you in person, but this will work too.
Well, Chris and I are presenting at the workshop. We're doing an intensive on upgrading the software of your mind. And during our dialogue in the next 20, 30 minutes, we're going to unbundle a little bit of what you can expect in our intensive. So, Chris, this is a term that you've used a lot. You introduced me to it. And you know me, I have a vivid imagination. So I love the term upgrading the software of your mind. Why don't you give us like a brief kind of overview of what that means to you?
Well, yeah, what I've found in doing a lot of leadership development work with corporate leaders, Fortune 100 companies, and especially with innovators and creators, is that a lot of times what gets in the way is not the actual challenge or problem, but the mindset we bring to it. And so, one of the things that I started to focus on in creative intensives and in work with innovative leaders, creative leaders, was what needs to happen in order to create the environment in our mind that really frees us up to be as creative as we can possibly be. And as we started to learn some of the techniques and processes that really enabled that, we kind of came up with this term upgrading the software of your mind because
Mhm.
that is what really ends up driving the results at the end of the day.
Well, you just mentioned an interesting term that I'd like to talk about a little bit, the environment of your mind. And, you know, the theme for our conference in Seattle is mind gaming.
Right.
And it's such a great term. And so let's talk about the environment of the mind. I know that, we wrote a book together, Thriving in Business and Life, and we really stress environment, that the key is creating environments where people can thrive. Well, when you just said the environment of your mind, I immediately thought, well, this is an environment where I can thrive, right?
Right.
It starts with me, it starts with the individual.
Well, it does. And then, if we set the, you could say the aim of what a leader or a creative person is trying to do, whether they're working on their own or collaboratively with a team, they can start to ask themselves, is what I'm doing, is what I'm saying, is the way I'm responding, so on, actually increasing the likelihood that have a thriving mindset and be at my creative
Mm.
best. You
Well,
you and I both have kind of loved this notion that each one of us have access to, you could say, an inner realm of genius. And so
right.
part of what we're saying is how do we create the conditions, if you will, in our mind and around us, with those around us, where everybody
Mhm.
is at their creative best. So when you
Mm.
think of creating that kind of environment where genius flourishes, what's that look like to you? What shows up in your thoughts about that?
Well, that's a great question on a number of levels. First of all, just personally, what does it mean to me? But also for our intensive and for the entire 2 days we're together in Seattle, we'll be creating an environment up there, hopefully where people can flourish and thrive. For
Yes.
me, I think it's a combination of two complementary and balancing aspects. One is security, could also say trust. I need to feel that I'm safe, you know, like not a comfort zone that suffocates creativity, but just a sense of stability. I need to feel that I've got some kind of foundation. And then the complementary part of that is also an encouragement to think outside the box, to get innovative, not to be bound by structure. Structure is important, but not when it binds us. When tradition can overwhelm innovation. So I think those two aspects for me are equally important, the foundation and also the invitation to free think.
Right. And, we often talk with creative leaders who've learned that one of the things that's truly important in regard to what you were saying was people having the freedom to fail and to actually have that be seen as part of the creative process.
Yeah,
One of the
right.
things that brings to mind, and when we talk about upgrading the software of the mind, one of the things we refer to is, what is the story that you are generating and living out with other people? We tend to create a narrative, you could say. So if we're on a creative process, we're developing something innovative or trying to solve a problem,
Right.
what is the story that we are all sharing together? And if I'm the leader or one of the key participants, am I, creating a narrative or a story that actually makes us want to show up and really dive in and participate fully?
Yeah, my mind goes to the great example of Edison, Thomas Edison, who was interviewed midst his many failures trying to create the light bulb. And he disagreed with the interviewer apparently and said, "No, I've never failed. I've just succeeded many times to not make it work.
Yeah, I've succeeded in finding 1,000 ways it doesn't work. Right.
I
Yeah.
found many ways that it doesn't work, and I've been successful with that." And yeah, it's a great reframe, and
Well,
he saw it as no reason to give up, and that was the story he was telling. The story he was telling was that he was experimenting on his way to success. He could have very easily told a different story like, "Oh, I keep failing. I'm probably going to fail again," in which case,
right. Well, it's I'm thinking about that whole idea of Edison and so on, and part of it, we've talked about this a lot of times when we're trying to help coach people through a creative endeavor. And part of what we're talking about is, do they have the end clearly in mind? In other words, have they cast a strong enough vision about where they're headed
Mhm.
that inspires and motivates and encourages people? And are they also the vision keeper? Are they keeping that flame alive as they go forward? So for us, part of upgrading the software of the mind is being aware of the story we're generating and how it's impacting people. Another part of it is being aware of biases that could potentially limit our thinking or get in the way of the creative
Right.
process.
Yeah, this is something I'm looking forward to exploring in our intensive up in Seattle, because biases are often unknown to the biaser. In other words,
Yes,
you can
unconscious.
see you can see my bias. I'm unconscious that I even have it. So ideally, we will create an environment there in our. I think we got a couple hours where we can feel safe enough to explore and maybe become aware of some of our personal biases that are, creating a story that isn't allowing us to be as creative as we could be and to innovate towards really radical solutions, which is the exciting thing about our exploration is, we're looking to supercharge our creative skills to really come up with remarkable solutions to, to the many problems that we're faced with.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, kind of one of the things we tap into when we start talking about limited thinking is, who am I choosing to participate with, right?
Yeah,
So part of what we talk about is the genius of inclusion.
yeah,
Who is it that I can start to really think about that could add to this project in ways that I may not necessarily even know that
yeah.
would be beneficial? But that whole idea of, who do I go to? How do I test the input? How do I get feedback?
Yeah, yeah,
What feedback loops do I establish? Having had the chance, as our company to work with Toyota, for example, to work with Whirlpool, to work with a lot of Intel and Microsoft and so on, to work with a lot of companies who are top innovators. What we've had to learn from them and also share with them is the process of what works and what doesn't work when it comes to collaboration and inclusion, which are such key elements to upgrading the software of your mind, really knowing how to do that effectively.
well, and that we'll get into in depth the whole skill set around team building. And one of the distinctions we make in our book and also in our online course is between the great leader and the good leader. And as we say,
Right.
both are important. In America, we have kind of the great man theory, kind of the Steve Jobs leader who's brilliant, charismatic, big reality warp field, and pulls everybody along with him. And that's important. That's to have somebody who's illumined that way and brightens the landscape for everybody. That's the great leader. The good leader is the team builder. the one who kind of directs the spotlight on others and, creates trust and an environment where everybody gets to shine, not just him. So I know we'll get into the dynamics of that because we have both in us. Every one of us has the capacity to be great and to be good, and both are important.
Well, absolutely. And as we were talking about inclusion, that is one of the things that we talk about with inclusion, the ability for a leader, for her to be able to really jump in and inspire and pull the team together in such a way that they truly feel that it's a team effort. And
Yeah.
so, that'll be one of the things we touch base on. Another one, and this is an area that's fun for both of us, but it's something you've spent a lot of time on, and that is really understanding the power of the visionary process and of using the imagination
Yeah.
to really conceptualize where we're headed. And Dr. Guillory, who's going to be doing his own presentation on quantum thinking, which I've been involved in it before, it's fantastic. We're
I
really
can't
stepping
wait for
up
that one.
alongside of him. Yeah, it's going to be
Really
fun.
looking
So
forward
tell
to it.
a little bit about the vision process from your standpoint, because this is something you are involved in every single day.
Yes, indeed. I certainly am. I think it's really a different paradigm for living, different paradigm for doing business. The one we're familiar with, we can call problem solution, where you start by focusing on a problem and try and solve it. It kind of works, but if you think about it, then we spend all our solving problems, which may not be as exciting as we'd like it to be. The new paradigm, which you and I both explore, we call vision navigation, particularly how it will feel. How will it feel to accomplish the vision that we have? And then how do we navigate to get there? And the navigation process, of course, depends on the two metrics that all travel relies on, which is knowing your starting point and knowing your destination. So it's not enough just to create a vision and then hope and pray to get there. We need to also assess the current situation. Where are we? Where are we starting from? And then let the vision draw us to the destination that we've chosen.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we're looking forward to doing in the intensive is actually showing people a multifold process that's very straightforward and very simple that walks through some of the steps that you just described and giving them a chance to practice that so that they'll be able to start to put a really powerful vision process into practice right away, something that will be very practical for them on a day-to-day basis, whether
Well,
it
and
be
this is
solving
this is
solutions or creating, new opportunities or innovations.
yeah, and this is a pet topic for you and me, because both of us, as lifelong educators, trainers, and learners, will never stop learning ourselves. I think we both feel a certain amount of regret, when we're sitting in the audience and witnessing a really remarkable presentation that's kind of going over people's heads because it's so much download, so much data. So I know you and I we didn't quite stumble into this. I think more we aggregated our joint experience into a three-phase learning system that seems to be intuitively what we do when we're at our best. And it works to really help listeners or viewers, readers, anyone who's taking in new information, integrate it in a way that actually helps them change their lives for the better. So let's go through these three steps, because I think it'd be interesting, even in the few minutes we have here, to give our viewers a little taste of what we'll dive deep into in Seattle in March.
Well, exactly. So with each concept we'll be sharing in that intensive. The first thing we'll do is kind of explore the concept so everybody really understands what we mean. But the very next thing we do, to me, is a key part of the process, and that is we'll actually imagine the simulation of them doing it. We'll invite them into a simulated process that's very much like what pro athletes or top musical performers use to prepare themselves for a high performance. And that is a real essential piece of that. And then the last piece, as you know, is putting it into practice to really give them a challenge to go out and actually do it.
Yeah, and I think the unique thing about our system that seems to really work is that we don't wait until the end of a long download to give people something to do. And, we all like to participate in presentations. So, we do experiential stuff. 1, 2, 3 formula is really repeated over and over again, referred to as the download, just like when we download computer software. Then we install it, as we do with new software on our computers. This is the software of our minds, and we install it by asking a very simple question: what if? What if you took this information you've just heard or seen or read and considered some specific aspect of your working life or your personal life? What would it be like if you told a different story, dropped your biases, etc.? How would that situation change? So, as you rightly called it, it's a simulation. As we know, pilots, go through simulations before they get in the real plane. Well, this is a life simulation. And after a person has been guided through a simulation of, using this new information on some specific in their life, then we give them a practice, something they can do, again relating to the real life, so they can begin to integrate what they're learning. And that 1, 2, 3 formula seems to really work.
Yeah, so we'll be the intensive we're going to be doing, as you said, it's 2 hours, but it's a very interactive 2 hours, and so we're really enthused to be able to, you know, have people join with us in something that's going to be very participative and give us a chance to really share the things that have been shared with us. We've both had phenomenal mentors, and we're passing along a lot of really high grade information that we've had a chance to assimilate and utilize and help others utilize as well. So, going to be an exciting time.
Yeah, and one of the facets I'm really looking forward to is diving into the topic of time travel. And whenever I mention that, people tend to think of a machine, getting in some kind of machine and going back or forward in time. I'm referring to what we do all day long, where in our minds we go into the past, remember a conversation over breakfast, or we go into the future, imagining going on a trip or something we need to do. Now, this is a real skill for creativity, because if we learn how to proactively time travel in our minds, talk about mind gaming, this is a real mind game, we can learn to detect artifacts in our memories that are not only haunting us, some kind of trauma in the past, say a failure, business failure, personal failure, but they're also affecting us in the present because they're influencing the story we're telling about what's happening, and also restricting our vision for the future. So we can learn how to travel into the past, identify memories that aren't serving us, and change them. Now,
Well,
my
yeah,
point,
it's basically it's a process that's being used quite regularly now to reframe
right?
the meaning we assign to the facts, and the ripple effect that happens by doing that puts us in a tremendously different frame of mind in the present.
Yeah, and I know that our colleagues are going to add to this, especially Adam. I interviewed Adam the other day, and he's a real scientist, and we got into the quantum field a little bit. And I know we're not just going to be talking about that, but having a chance to experience being in the quantum field together, where time, for instance, is not linear. It doesn't really move from past to present to future, where it's possible to actually experience the future as a present reality. So, when we talk about vision, we're not just talking about seeing something, we're also talking about feeling it as a present time reality. And everybody who's troublesome and some visions that haven't fully manifested yet. So we're going to help them learn how to skate in the quantum soup. How's that for a mixed metaphor? And learn how to become a time master in Kairos, in quantum time, and really, well, talk about an upgrade for the software of your mind. There's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got some foundational steps that we're talking about, obviously, with some basic things like understanding how we create stories, understanding how biases can limit our thinking, and then starting to get into the vision process so that we are actually creating a vision that is so powerfully felt that it is what, as you said, pulls us forward. But it's also, we're being open to the possibility that it's also not only, you could say, setting up, a quantum field, but getting down just to basic brain research. What happens when we create an experience imaginatively that's that real, that we feel that strongly? The beautiful thing is, as we know, there's part of our brain that actually absorbs that experience as if it were real, as if
Yes.
it already happened, and starts to then look for evidence and clues as to how we got there. And
Yeah.
this process is something you and I use, and we see it with clients all the time. When we can start to engage the brain in that kind of future reality, to where it's looking to find the way to the thing we've already experienced, that's as a as a present reality, even though it's in the future. It's
Yeah.
remarkable
Yeah.
what can happen, not only in terms of our ability to solve problems and be aware, but how it stimulates the entire creative process.
Well, exactly. And the creative process is really our theme for the entire 2-day event, how to get more creative and innovative in our work and in our personal lives. Well, I think our time's just about up here, Chris, and just want to give the logistics for the event. Hey, I'm really looking forward to doing the intensive with you, by the way. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be a great time. We always have a great time. Back and forth. We've done this enough to where we can finish each other's sentences most of the time.
Right. So March 21st and 22nd, the Architects of the New Paradigm Conference up in Seattle, and the website is anpconference.com. All the information is on there, including registration. There's an early bird fee, so take advantage of that. I think we have room for, I think, about 400 people, lots of breakout groups. And just to give you one final tidbit before we sign off, just a possibility. Just imagine if what you are imagining could turn into perception. This is a provocative question that I ask some of my clients, that, we imagine how the future could turn out. What if we could learn not just how to imagine how a future event might occur, but how to perceive what's already occurred in the quantum field and will show up in linear time in the future, but that already exists? How about that?
Yeah, I like it. And, imagine yourself there having an awesome time, because it's going to truly be a phenomenal group of people gathered together. Networking is going to be one of the key
Right.
bonuses of this entire event.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us. Will Wilkinson here and Chris Harding, partnering for an intensive at the conference. And we hope to see you in Seattle.
Just in case Will's sound got a little funky there, so that's anpconference.com. I look forward to seeing you all there.